phones off. Oh, my backpack.
Yes, you will.
Think about that every now and then.
It's so much to work.
Okay, seems that everybody's finally sitting down and everybody's out of the restroom. We double checked our cell phones. All right, thank you. That being said, I'll just hand it over to Brian.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm sure I don't know how many are friends and how many are family, but I'm sure it's been good to be able to see each other and be in a setting like this. I want to thank Sandy did just such a great job of talking about her mom. And my approach to doing a life celebration service is, I believe that every life is a story that deserves to be told. And my privilege is being able to come and meet a new person by being able to hear Lois's story. And Sandy just did a phenomenal. I could have listened to you talk forever because, frankly, what you guys have in your family in this day and age is kind of rare. It's just a beautiful family and a beautiful family story. And so tonight we're here to do two things, really. We are here obviously to mourn her loss, but we're here more importantly to celebrate a woman who lived her 88 years. It sounds like about as well as she possibly could. And it does mean so much. I think as we get older, it's really common for us to start asking some of the bigger questions of life. And one of those questions is, does my life matter? Did I make a difference to the people that I love and the people that love me back? Did it make any impact at all? And you're making a collective statement here today that her life mattered, and it mattered in a big way. And that's really why we're here. This last year during COVID and with everything going on, losing someone during this time is extra rough. And then, Sandy told me that even at the age of 88, that her loss is rather sudden. And when you have a sudden, unexpected loss, you can take grief and multiply it by 10, because there's just such a suddenness to it and a hole that's left by someone who, by all accounts, played that matriarchal role in the family. And so it's so important that you come together. I'm a big believer in something that I call holy collisions. And what I mean by that is, if you think back over the course of your life, there are certain times that you run into the exact right person at the exact right moment of your life for the exact right reason that you needed to run into that person. That's a holy collision. And you may be sitting next to one of your holy collisions right now. And one of the great parts of the story that I heard from Sandy was that Lois and the man in her life they met officially, I guess, at 14 years of age, and they really were the all-American high school sweetheart story. And I understand that if you rewind the clock even before that, they grew up on the same street as toddlers. So maybe they threw rocks at each. We don't know what happened in those early years, but it sounded like they were supposed to meet. And that holy collision, if that hadn't happened, whatever happened at those magical 14, 15, 16, and led them together for their 61 years of marriage. I mean, that's mind-boggling if you think of it. That's amazing. But if that hadn't happened, this entire group isn't even sitting here. And whenever I have the privilege to do a service like this, and please know that it is a privilege, I consider this group that's gathered in this room at this moment, we're our own version of a holy collision. There's really no reason to explain why this particular group would ever be together than whatever your connection is to the family and the story. And let's be honest, when we all parked our cars here a little bit ago, every one of us have things we're worried about. There's decisions we're trying to make, things going on in our life that maybe nobody else in the room even knows about. And those are all going to be waiting for us when we get back in our cars here in a few minutes. But my goal is very simple. I think that by the time we get back in our cars, we're all going to be a little bit better off simply because we took a few minutes out and paid attention to Lois's story. And that's our goal here together tonight. 88 years, to be honest, is kind of hard for me to wrap my head around. I believe that generation, and it looks like maybe a few of you are from that same generation. They call it the greatest generation, and there's a reason for it. There was a grit and a determination and a value system in that generation that simply doesn't exist like that anymore. And that's part of their story and part of their legacy. Well, obviously, I did not have the privilege to know her, but for the next few moments, I'm going to be reading from some people that knew her very well, starting with Sam. Sam had this to say. It says, Grandma. One of the recurring themes that seems to come up as we reminisce on the memories of Grandma was the love that she had for her family. As far back as I can remember, my childhood was filled with memories of Grandma and Grandpa's house. From taking pictures in our matching 4th of July shirts to inspecting the mountains of presents underneath her perfectly decorated Christmas tree, I can't help but smile thinking back to those times. What I'll miss most about those memories was the warmth and comfort that Grandma provided. The love she had for her family could be felt and remained constant year after year, no matter what was going on in the outside walls of her house. As a kid, I didn't quite understand why tears would fill her eyes when those holidays ended and we packed up our cars and headed home. But now I understand. The love that she had for her family was so strong and profound, and she cherished every single moment that our family was together. Today, my eyes fill with tears the same way they filled Grandma's as we would say goodbye all those years. Although the pain I feel is immense, I try to remind myself that they are not all tears of sadness. I find comfort in knowing that she is now with Grandpa. The love they shared was beautiful and truly inspirational, and I'm just so happy that they get to be back together. So to my Grandma, an artist with her crafts, a chef with her home cooking, a constant in our changing lives, a loving and caring soul, and the foundation of our family. I love you, and you will truly be missed. I don't know where Sam is, but you're like the Nicholas Sparks of eulogies. That's so well said. So thank you for providing that. And then Sandy also provided a eulogy. She said, thank you all for coming to honor the life of my mom today. I know I could never put my feelings for her on a piece of paper or a speech, as they go far beyond that. In the past years since Dad passed away, I was her caregiver, but in reality, it was the other way around. We took care of each other every day, whether by being together or on the phone, always being there for each other in every way. Mom never stopped being the advice giver, the listener, and the problem solver for me. The week she passed was such a shock. I wasn't ready for it after the week she had had. Her attitude was wonderful. She was happy and positive and really enjoyed her apartment and the people that she had come into contact with. She had visitors, her brother Dick and sister-in-law Jane, who were such a big help to us, and her sister Linda. I took her to the grocery store, and as I was getting her into the wheelchair, a man walked by, pulled a rose out of a bouquet he had bought, and gave it to her. She was so happy by his kindness and people that day kept asking to help us. She said, people sure are nice and loving. The kicker came when I visited her 2 days before she passed, and when I was not going to be seeing her the next week on our normal day. I hugged her, and I told her I loved her, and she said, wait, I'm not going to see you again. To which I replied, oh, Mom, yes, you will. I will stop by on Friday, if I had only known. My mom was the most special and loving woman I have ever known, and the void in my life will be sorely felt by me and my family. She was the reason for our get-togethers and bringing the family together, and I know my life will not be the same without my loving mom. Although mom is no longer with me, I take solace in the fact that she is now in the arms of dad, the love of her life. Again, beautifully written. I have one more. Good. Abby wrote this, and she just gave me this thumbs up, so she's going to read it herself. Sorry.
I'm gonna try to read this. I might need to pass it on later on, but I just wanted to at least try. There are so many special words to say, yet I'm not sure I could ever amount up to the way that I feel about Grandma. As I sit and reminisce on the memories that my grandmother provided me, I am flooded with emotions. Emotions of grief and sadness, alongside emotions of happiness and nostalgia. I keep reminding myself that the sadness is worth it, to have somebody in your life that you love so much. As the saying goes, it is better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. Thinking back on all the memories I have of my grandma, I would never trade a thing. She was a wonderful woman with a kind and gentle spirit. She brought our families together and always showed up to support her children and grandchildren, whether it was a soccer game or my baton recitals, holidays, or just a weekend with the family. She was always there. She would also send cards every holiday, something that I'm going to miss dearly. I have kept most of them, and I will think about her selflessness and how she was always wanting to make other people smile. She took the time to pick cards out that would make us smile, a gentle gesture that made an everlasting effect on my life. She always put others in front of herself, and she loved her family so much. She was a huge staple of my childhood. There are so many subtle things that will always make me think of her. I can remember as a child coming to Grandma's house. There was always an opportunity for adventure. I loved being there. I loved looking through all of her photos and learning about her history and mine. I loved catching a glimpse of the albino squirrel that would eat out of her bird feeder. I loved taking my shoes off and exploring the backyard and climbing the Japanese maple tree that was so important to us as the years went on. I loved the smells of her cooking. I loved the general smell of her home. The house always smelled the same, and my mom even mentioned it smelled the same since she was a child. I will miss that smell, but I'll always be on the lookout for the smells that bring that familiar sense to my heart, and I will think of Grandma and all the love and the memories that she instilled into my life. I got to know Grandma a little better as I got older, especially within the past couple of years. She had a rough go with those years, but she always kept the lightheartedness during times of distress. She always thought it was important to stay laughing no matter how hard it got. Through the moments of grief, I think back to the memories that made me laugh with her, and it helps me get by. Like the one time she accidentally put ketchup on my peanut butter sandwich. It wasn't her fault that Heinz was experimenting with purple colored ketchup. Or how her and I would stay up late together and watch a show called Ridiculousness on MTV until she got too tired to keep her eyes open. She was always so funny and full of surprises. Right before the shutdown, my grandma had broken her hip. I got the honor of going over to her house and taking care of her some of the days. These were some of the most special days to me, to take care of somebody who had taken care of me my whole life. To spend this intimate time with her was precious, and I'm forever grateful to have the opportunity to be with her during that process. I learned a lot about her and myself, and I will keep those memories close to my heart. As I make my way through the grieving process, I keep reminding myself that grief isn't a linear thing, and some moments are going to be harder than others. I will live with the grief for the rest of my life, but we find ways to adapt and grow from it. I will try to find inspiration from the love that my grandma showed me, and I will apply it to my current and future relationships. This is how the legacy lives on, through the way that we love. I can only hope to do her justice as I go on and have my own grandchildren and children someday. I will think of her every day. I find solace in the subtle things that remind me of her, like when a red cardinal passes by, or if I ever get to see an albino squirrel. I will think of her when I make floral arrangements. She was so funny about that. I would give her flowers after arranging them myself, and moments later she would be in the kitchen rearranging them again, but she always made them look so much more beautiful. She had an eye for things like that. She was such a creative person. I will think about her when I stand next to the ocean and watch the pelicans fly by, wondering how it must feel for her to be reunited with my grandpa once again. I know that she missed him so much. Today is not only a day of mourning, but a day of celebration. Celebrating the love that my grandma brought into our lives. Celebrating her journey into the next realm as she walks next to my grandpa. Celebrating her legacy and everlasting impact on our lives. She will be missed, but she will live on within and beside all of us.
I think you would all agree she did a phenomenal job. Thank you so much, Abby, for doing that. And she let me read it ahead of time. I'm like, you got a grandma to watch ridiculousness with you? That makes her the coolest grandma on the planet right there. But and being able to hear these stories from, and I know that the rest of the family, you all have stories like that. I understand that she was the historian of the family. And, the hard part about losing someone that was such a big part of the glue that held you all together is now you have to decide who's going to fill in those roles. Because that's the legacy that goes on. Who's going to step in? Because let's be honest, we're all living out our narrative right now. And how you all react to this loss will be part of your story as you go on. And you obviously have some gifted writers in the family, and I'd encourage you to do whatever you have to continue the legacy that she's kept on. To me, there's a big difference between being a human being and a human doing. In our culture, we put a lot of emphasis on what it means to be a human doing. If you and I were to meet for coffee for the first time, we'd probably ask each other in the first 60 seconds, what do you do? Or what did you do? Because we attach a lot of our personality and a lot of who we are and our identity to whatever we perform occupationally. And I understand that Lois was an incredible human doer. Sandy told me that she has kept busy right up as far as she could. She kept herself busy, her hands busy, her mind busy. I understand she was a florist for like 31 years, and which is an art form. Made all kinds of craft out of all kinds of resources, from clothes to dolls. And the thing that I was most interested in was when you told me she made burlap dolls that somehow Disney found out about it, and they purchased them to be able to resell. And Disney doesn't joke around. They're after quality stuff. So just an amazing fabric of everything that you said. And there's no doubt that she was an incredible human doing. Everything that I've heard. And to be able to come early and see your pictures. I mean, it's like watching the history of America just by seeing the pictures. And there's something powerful about a picture, isn't there? I have 3 sons of my own, and I worry about them because all their pictures are on a phone or in the cloud, whatever that is. And there's something really powerful about holding a picture in your hand. And my encouragement is, as you know, because you've gone through loss before, the first year is the hardest. Because you'll have the first birthday and the first set of holidays, and there's going to be a time in the months ahead you're going to think that you've kind of got it put in a compartment. But kind of like Abby said, grief is not linear. It's messy. It's all over the place. And my encouragement is that in the time ahead, when something happens to remind you of her, just stop whatever it is you're doing and let that moment do whatever that moment's supposed to do. Get a copy of this slideshow that's been playing. And the reason that I do this for the Route Song, I have a normal job, but the reason I do this, I lost my mom to cancer a few years ago, and it became really real. There's just, when you lose your parents, man, it is hard, and a grandparent, and the hard part about this life is the closer we get to somebody, the harder it is to say goodbye. And that's what makes what you're doing here today so special. Because she was a great human doing. She was an incredible human being. And it's those parts of herself that are going to live on beyond. I asked Sandy, I said, I think we learn a lot about a person by just watching how they maneuver life, the ups and downs and all the in-betweens. And I said, as you watched your mom, what did you learn just about how to live by watching her? And I wrote down what she said. She said the most important thing that she taught me was when you pick a mate and you get married, that person is also your best friend. They had that kind of marriage, and that's how they got through the tough times, the good times, and the hard times. She was the glue that held our family together. She said she was a very private person. She would keep a lot of that stuff on the inside, but the way that she got through was just by continued to go. And that is probably the biggest legacy that she could pass on, because that's what life, there's no protection against the good and the bad. It's just moving forward. We think that we have so much to complain about today. That generation went through more than we could ever imagine. and they did it with strength and dignity and values. And those are the kind of things that will live on long past her. You know, it is said in life that we are born one time, but we die 2 times. And the first time we die is a physical death that has now happened. It's going to happen to every one of us in this room. We don't know when, where, or how. But the second time we die, in my opinion, is much more tragic, because the second time we die is the last time anybody ever says our name out loud. It's the last time anybody ever tells one of our stories. You know, and for the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren and the great-great-grandchildren, my encouragement is never stop telling their stories. Don't put their pictures away, because there's a legacy here that is well worth. This is the American hero story, in my opinion, just a phenomenal story. And as I close my time, I'd like to share a reading with you that I hope, I wasn't sure if I was going to share it, but I hope it matches the kind of life that you've all had and the kind of life that Lois lived and wanted to pass on. This was taken as part of a speech that Anna Quinlan gave at a Villanova graduation. And it's one of the most powerful things I've ever run across. And I hope that it brings honor to the way that Lois lived her life. She said, "You walk out of here today with the one thing that no one else has. There will be hundreds of people out there with your same degree. There will be thousands of people that you do what you do for a living. But you will be the only person alive who has sole custody of your life, your particular life, your entire life. Not just your life at a desk or your life on a bus or in a car or at the computer. Not just the life of your mind, but the life of your heart. Not just your bank account, but your soul. People these days don't talk about the soul very much anymore, because it's much easier to write a resume than it is to craft a spirit. But a resume is a cold comfort on a winter night, or when you're sad or broke or lonely, or when you've gotten back the test results and they're not so good." So she said, "Here's my resume. I tried to be a good mom to my 3 kids. I tried to never let my profession stand in the way of being a good parent. I no longer consider myself the center of the universe. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I'm a good friend to my husband. I've tried to make my marriage vows mean what they say. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I'm a good friend to my friends, and they are to me. Without them, there would be nothing to say to you today, because I would simply be a cardboard cutout. But I call them on the phone when I can. I meet them for lunch. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I would be rotten or at best mediocre at my work if those other things were not true, because you cannot really be first rate at your work if your work is all you are. So here's what I wanted to tell you today. Get a life. Get a real life, not just the manic pursuit of the next promotion or a bigger paycheck or a larger house. Do you think you'd care so very much about those things if you blew an aneurysm one afternoon or found a lump in your breast? Get a life in which you're not alone. Find people that will love you and people that you can love back. And remember that love is not leisure. It is really hard work. So pick up the phone, send an email, write a letter, kiss your mom, hug your dad. Get a life in which you were generous and realize that life is the best thing ever, and we have no business taking it for granted." She said, "It's so easy to exist instead of live, but I learned this many years ago because something really bad happened to me, something that if I had my choice would have never happened at all. But it has taught me the biggest lesson of my life. I learned to love the journey and not the destination. And I learned that this life is not a dress rehearsal, and today is the only guarantee that we get." So I try to do that by telling everybody that I meet the following advice. Consider the lilies of the field. Look at the fuzz on the back of a baby's ear. Read a book in the backyard with the sun shining in your face, and learn to be happy. And think of life as a terminal illness, because if you do, you will live it with joy and passion as it ought to be lived. And it sounds to me like that's how Lois lived her entire life. Thank you so much for allowing Max and I to be part of your family for these few moments. You have a special legacy to live out, and so it's an honor to be able to be here. I'd like to, if you're comfortable, I'd like to close with a brief word of prayer, and then our time will be done. Okay, let's pray. God, I'm so grateful to be able to come alongside this family and to be able to hear Lois' story. It's stories like this. I wish there were a channel on TV that we could watch this story play out, and how it started so many years ago, and the way that she lived her life, and what she's meant to this family and what this family has meant to her. So I pray, God, now that you have received her and she is with the love of her life, and I'm sure we'll eagerly wait to be able to see every face that's in this room right now. So God, I pray continued blessing and comfort on the family, not only tonight, but in the weeks and days and months ahead. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Brian. On behalf of the Round Song family, thank you for coming today for Lois's services. Do hope that you are in good care and good nature here. Before we leave and close the casket for today, I invite everybody to take a last leave. We'll be dismissing from the rear forward until it comes to you guys, and then we'll all close the casket together, if that's all right with you.
Wonderful.